Trans-Allegheny Lunatic Asylum.
The Trans-Allegheny
Lunatic Asylum, of course, is a popular haunted attraction in West Virginia.
It was built for only 250 people to visit here and to be able to stay here and get cured. Unfortunately, because of warehousing, it turned into over 2,600 patients at one time.
The historic landmark is now acclaimed to be one of the most haunted places in America. Hello everyone, my name is Arizu and welcome to my channel's first ever haunting video. Today's video we're going to be delving into the deep and twisted history of one of America's most haunted locations, the Trans-Allegheny Lunatic Asylum, as well as the idea behind why the need for these terrifying hospitals originated in the first place. The hospital itself is known for the numerous ghost stories told by workers and visitors who experienced strange phenomenon and witnessed the unexplainable. It's no doubt, when looking back on the asylum's history, the decades of trauma that occurred there are responsible for the massive spiritual presence experienced on the property. But what historically was responsible for the trauma that possibly acts as the driving force for these restless spirits? And what was it that caused the eventual collapse of this driving economic force from its opening to its closure in the 1990s? Prior to the asylum era, those who displayed modern symptoms of insanity were considered possessed by demons, witches, and even the devil himself. The most notorious example of this was the Salem witch trials in 1692, a series of accusations of witchcraft leading to numerous hangings and executions that took place in the Puritan colonies. These archaic beliefs of witchcraft and possession resulted in the witch hunting becoming a common practice throughout the colonies, which is most likely the reason for the harsh and cruel treatment the insane received in later decades. Those believed to be insane would be hidden away by their families in attics, sheds, and even holes in the ground. Those who had no family would be placed in prisons along with criminals chained to the walls in the most inhumane conditions. Eventually, facilities began to be constructed to house these insane in the 1770s. However, these were designed to remove them from society rather than cure them. At the time, insanity was considered incurable. The 1800s brought a time of enlightenment, with the intellectual movement introducing ideas focused on the pursuit of knowledge through logic and evidence, rather than reasons of superstition and blind faith. At the time, social reforms spread throughout the country empowered by the ideas of the Enlightenment. A notable reformer during the era was Doretha Dix, a teacher and a nurse known for her commitment to improving the treatment of the mentally ill. During her visit to a local jail in Cambridge, Massachusetts, she witnessed the horrific conditions inmates experienced. She exposed the jail to the public, forcing Massachusetts state legislature to authorize funds for more humane care of the mentally ill. Mid-century, more reforms occurred, with Thomas Kirkbride's theory and dubbed Kirkbride Plan taking hold, creating what is notoriously known as asylums. The Kirkbride Plan was created by Dr. Thomas Story Kirkbride, who worked with the insane at the Quaker-run Friends Asylum for the Insane in Frankfort. There, he experienced a rather progressive form of moral treatment at the time, involving a family atmosphere for patients along with stimulating activities. The plan includes long wings arranged in a formation that would assure abundant therapeutic sunlight and fresh air to patients. The idea was more humane than previous facilities that were constructed for security and safety, rather than the patients in mind. The plan also involved being in rural areas where patients would be among complete strangers and closed off from all connections to the outside world. In the early 1850s, the Virginia General Assembly authorized the Trans-Allegheny Lunatic Asylum, and construction began. However, construction was quickly halted with the outbreak of America's most historic and violent war. The Civil War began in April of 1861, with the Trans-Allegheny Lunatic Asylum having only completed the southernmost wing and basement. What was built of the asylum became known as Camp Tyler for the Union, establishing Weston as an important military post during the war. Confederate raids in 1862 and 1863 temporarily dislodged Union troops in the area, and with the creation of West Virginia as a U.S. state in 1863, the hospital was renamed the West Virginia Hospital for the Insane. The new state government resumed the project, completing the asylum in 1881. Despite most towns being in financial ruin and experiencing post-war depression, business in Weston boomed as its asylum opened, becoming a primary economic resource, remaining so until its closure 130 years later. The hospital opened in 1864, built originally to house 250 patients on its property. As patients began to be admitted, early logbooks used at the hospital list reasons for admission, including grief, domestic trouble, laziness, being too religious, menopause, superstition, and tuberculosis. Those who were unwanted in society were dumped at the asylum. Strangely enough, money was offered to those who brought patients, despite many showing no signs of mental illness. Misdiagnosed conditions and unfortunate situations led to innocent victims spending entire lifetimes at the asylum, ending up as one of the hundreds of unmarked graves on its property. In 1881, more than 700 patients were housed there, which is way more than 250.
Issues began to arise, however, and by 1938, the asylum housed 1,661 patients, now including alcoholics and drug addicts recovering amongst the mentally ill.
Just a little over 2 decades later, the hospital reached its peak at 2,400 patients, which is more than 10 times the amount that had originally been built to hold. That's insane. The overcrowding and poor sanitation, along with insufficient lighting and heating throughout most of the facility, made it one of the worst times for patients and staff at the hospital. The treatments, although considered progressive for the time, were just as barbaric as medieval ones. But before I get into that, please make sure you subscribe and hit the notification bell, as I will be continuing this series and covering more of the ghost stories at the Trans-Allegheny Lunatic Asylum. Let me know down in the comments what other kind of videos you guys like to see and what kind of haunted locations you'd like me to cover. The building contained 2.5 feet thick walls, which served to muffle the insane scream due to the barbaric healing tactics used during the 19th century. Bloodletting and insulin coma therapy, a treatment for those with schizophrenia that involved putting patients into comas, which was used all the way until the 1950s. Violent patients were placed in seclusion cells and confinement cribs, also known as Utica cribs, which were long and narrow cage beds that made for a nightmarish restraint. Those who complained would be forced into solitary confinement, chained to a wall for as long as several months. During the 20th century, treatments ranged from ice water baths, electroshock therapy, and most infamously, lobotomies. The procedure would involve an ice pick being hammered by a mallet through the orbital socket of the eye into the brain, creating holes in the patient's skull. Doctors would sever the connection between the frontal lobe and the thalamus, the parts of the brain responsible for thinking and emotions, as it was believed to reduce abnormal stimuli responsible for the patient's behavior. Most patients were forced into surgery without consent, and often left awake during the procedure in order for doctors to monitor the brain. Dr. Walter Freeman infamously performed 787 lobotomies at West Virginia hospitals in 1952, including 228 at Weston. His intention was to reduce the severe overcrowding at facilities and ultimately eliminate mental illness. His methods led to surgeries being performed by untrained doctors and done in unsanitary conditions. After the procedure, patients would either be cured or show no signs of improvement at all. However, most experienced severe changes in personality and were left disabled for life, an empty shell with no signs of the person they once were. Despite Freeman's efforts, overcrowding conditions worsened. Hallways were filled with patients sleeping on the floor and violence increased. In one case, 2 patients attempted to hang another patient and then used a metal bed frame to crush his head by jumping on top of it repeatedly. Several female employees were raped or attacked, and one nurse's body was found rotting at the bottom of an unused staircase. Patients were kept in cages, others confined to dirty wards, bathrooms filled with feces and urine. Fights broke out among patients, and many committed suicide, all escalating till 1994, when Weston State Hospital was given the court order to close its doors. The facility over the years experienced physical deterioration and a lack of funding, leading to its forced closure in 1994. It's said over thousands were admitted to the hospital over the years, and an estimated 30,000 are buried on the property. Unfortunately, because of the lack of staff in the asylum, many records of those who live there are unrecorded, and it's unclear who lies in the thousands of unmarked graves. Today, the Trans-Allegheny Lunatic Asylum is open as a tourist and historical attraction, with one of the patients' wards restored. The rest of the facilities remain untouched, decayed, and rusted with the memories of the spirits that once roamed its walls. Tons of unexplainable phenomena and instances of paranormal activity, such as scratches and disembodied voices, have been reported and documented by staff and visitors. Most famously, the asylum is known for its hundreds of shadow figures seen roaming the halls at night.
One of the most famous spirits found at the asylum today is Lily, a little girl whose only home was the asylum. Little is known about the patients who were admitted to the asylum, but these snippets into the past may be the clues to the mysterious and dark history behind the asylum. Thank you guys so much for watching the video. I really hope that you guys enjoyed it. It was definitely fun and interesting for me to make and learn about this place that I have had quite the obsession with. At the end, I decided to put a slideshow of photos from when I actually visited the Trans-Allegheny Asylum. I visited it twice so far. First time I went on the criminally insane tour to the back buildings, which are newer compared to the original building. And then the second time I went on one of the daytime ghost tours, which was really interesting and definitely gave insight on what it was like to live in the asylum when it was open. And in the next photo, you're going to see the lobotomy room where all the lobotomies took place. And you can tell that it's just a big, wide open room. They actually had people waiting for the lobotomies while the lobotomies were happening in that room, which to me is just insane. I mean, it's completely unsanitary. You'll also notice that they have plastic chairs. This is because people have said they've gotten really bad headaches or migraines or just fainted. So the chairs are there so people don't like fall on the floor and hit their heads because they're experiencing this like phenomenon left over from the lobotomies. And there's actually a number of phenomena that you can experience on the property. Like the bathing rooms where people with bladder issues were housed, they used lavender to cover up the smell, and you can actually smell lavender. It's insane. And it's just the craziest thing ever. But anyways, here's pictures of, I believe, the boys' wards, the young boys' wards. And in this next photo, you'll see it's crazy. They use scratches these boys would leave on the windowsills because they were so bored and they would just sit there and scratch. And like some of these scratches are just so deep. It's crazy. But yeah, here's more pictures of just the hallways. I took a lot. Here's actually a photo of where two boys hang themselves. They hang themselves in that room on the ceiling. This is, of course, Lily's room, if you recognize it from the video. But yeah, I really hope you guys enjoyed the video. It was definitely fun for me to make, and I would love to make more videos. So just comment down below if there's any places specifically you'd like for me to talk about in the future, or if you want to see more content on the Trans-Allegheny Lunatic Asylum. I would love to do that. But anyways, I hope you guys have a great day, and thank you for watching.